Imagine walking into a perfectly sterile, brightly lit laboratory.
Like hospital-level sterile, right?
Exactly. I mean, the walls are blindingly white, the steel tables are gleaming, and the air just smells of harsh antiseptic.
You can almost hear the fluorescent lights buzzing.
Yeah, that exact vibe.
Mm.
And sitting right in the center of this room, amidst this huge tangle of wires and humming machinery, is a severed human head.
Which is just a horrific image.
It is. But here's the thing. It's not dead.
Right.
It's hooked up to tubes, its lips are actually twitching, and it is actively giving orders to the most powerful scientists and politicians in the country.
It sounds totally like a scene from some, I don't know, modern cyberpunk video game or a horror movie.
It really does. But this isn't a modern sci-fi script. This is actually the chilling, prophetic vision that C.S. Lewis had way back in 1945.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah, he was projecting where society completely detached from God would ultimately end up.
It's a terrifying image, honestly.
Yeah.
And it strikes right at the heart of, well, what happens when humanity tries to just seize the throne of creation for itself?
Totally.
I mean, Lewis wasn't just writing a ghost story here. He was looking at the trajectory of the modern world. You know, the obsession with efficiency, the lust for power.
The industrialization of everything.
Exactly. And he was projecting it forward to its ultimate, logical, and deeply spiritual conclusion.
Which is exactly why we are stepping into that laboratory today and looking at the resistance, fighting against it. So welcome to the deep dive. We are so thrilled you're joining us for this one.
Yeah, this is going to be a fascinating journey.
Today, we are immersing ourselves in an exploration of C.S. Lewis's 1945 novel, That Hideous Strength.
Such a great title.
It really is. Lewis actually subtitled this book A Modern Fairy Tale for Grown-Ups. But if you hear fairy tale and think of bedtime stories with princesses, you need to completely adjust your expectations.
Yeah, there are no glass slippers in this one.
Not at all. This is a profound apocalyptic thriller. And our mission for you on this deep dive is very specific.
Right. We are going to examine this story and the deep theological analyses surrounding it from a specifically conservative evangelical perspective.
Because it is packed with theology.
Oh, absolutely packed. We want to uncover how Lewis's brilliant sci-fi narrative actually acts as this, like, devastatingly accurate mirror for Christian faith.
Right.
The goal is that by looking at this fictional world, you'll be able to read your Bible with just a much richer understanding. You'll be inspired to love Christ more deeply.
And crucially, equipped to live out your faith in the actual trenches of your daily life.
Exactly, without being swept away by a modern culture that is constantly demanding your compromise.
Okay, let's unpack this. To give you the lay of the land, That Hideous Strength revolves around a cosmic clash between two fundamentally opposed sides.
The ultimate good versus evil setup.
Right. So on one side, you have the N.I.C.E., which stands for the National Institute of Co-ordinated Experiments.
Which is just the most bureaucratic-sounding name ever.
It is. And they are headquartered at this sprawling estate called Belbury. But despite that really warm, friendly acronym N.I.C.E., they are a demonic, technocratic organization.
Yeah, they're not nice at all.
No, not at all. They are attempting to conquer nature, eradicate human messiness, and basically engineer a new world order entirely without God.
And then, completely opposed to them, you have a community based at St. Anne's on the Hill.
Such a stark contrast.
Oh, completely. This is a small, faithful, highly organic, and just unapologetically eccentric Christian household.
Eccentric is definitely the right word.
Yeah, and they're led by a mysterious figure known as the Director, or Ransom, who actually holds this ancient mythical title of the Pendragon.
Which is so cool.
It is. St. Anne's represents the true God-given order of creation. I mean, they are fighting to preserve humanity itself.
And caught completely unaware in the crossfire of this massive spiritual war is a young married couple, Mark and Jane Studdick.
They are kind of the audience surrogates in a way.
Yeah, they are just drifting apart in their marriage. They are largely secular, and they find themselves being pulled asunder, just drawn into these two totally opposing camps.
Such a brilliant narrative device.
So I want to start with Mark Studdick, because his journey is where this book gets, frankly, uncomfortably relatable.
Oh, it really hits close to home.
Right. Mark is a sociologist at Bracton College. And he is not some evil mastermind twirling a mustache, plotting the downfall of civilization.
No, he's just a normal guy.
He is just a guy. But he is a guy who has a desperate, almost pathetic hunger to belong to what he calls the progressive element at his college.
He just wants to be on the inside.
Exactly.
This is the concept of the inner ring.
Uh-huh.
Lewis wrote brilliantly about this in his essays too, and Mark is just the ultimate embodiment of it.
Can you explain the inner ring a bit more?
Sure. Basically, every human institution, so a college, a corporation, a church, a high school, has an official hierarchy.
Like an org chart.
Right, an org chart.
Mm-hmm.
But underneath that official hierarchy, there's always an unwritten, invisible circle of the people who actually hold the power, the insiders.
The cool kids table, basically.
Exactly, the cool kids table. And Mark looks at these older, influential guys at the college people, like the subwarden Curry, and this incredibly slick, well-connected politician named Lord Feverstone.
Whose real name is Dick Devine, which I always find funny.
Yeah, Dick Devine. So Mark watches how they operate, how they nod to each other, the inside jokes they share, and he wants nothing more than to be part of that circle.
There is this fascinating moment early on where Curry casually uses the word we to include Mark in a closed-door conversation about college politics.
Oh, and Mark just eats it up.
He is ecstatic. He feels this rush of intense pleasure just from the implication that he has finally been granted access to the secret room.
It's such a universal human experience, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, I think back to middle school, just desperately wanting to sit at the right lunch table, or even now in the professional world.
Right, wanting to be CC'd on the important emails.
Yes, wanting to be asked for your opinion by the boss. You just want to matter. You want to feel important.
And that very ordinary desire for status, that craving to be on the inside, is the exact bait the N.I.C.E. uses to lure Mark into a literal demonic conspiracy.
Which is terrifying.
It is. Lewis is making a profound theological point here. He's saying that the outer rim of total catastrophic evil almost always touches the life of a very ordinary, respectable profession.
Right. Mark doesn't go out looking to join a satanic cult.
No, he just wants to advance his career. He wants his colleagues to think he's smart and indispensable. But the text shows how those seemingly mundane professional ambitions, if they are left unchecked by moral boundaries, they literally swing the door wide open to dark forces.
Okay, but hold on, though. I have to push back here a little.
Go for it.
You're saying Mark wanting a promotion or wanting to be respected by his peers leads to literal demonic influence. That feels like a massive leap to me.
I get that. It does sound crazy at first.
Because everyone wants to be respected at work. We all want to do well in advance. How do we go from, I want to be part of the leadership team to I am actively serving forces that want to destroy God's creation? It just seems a little extreme.
It does seem extreme, right up until you look at the mechanism of how compromise actually works.
Okay, lay it on me.
So to understand this, the theological analyses of the book lean really heavily on Augustine's City of God.
A classic.
Right. Augustine argued that all of human history is essentially a tale of two cities, and they are built by two different loves.
Okay.
So the city of God is built by the love of God, even to the contempt of self.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning you love God so much, you are willing to sacrifice your own ambition, your own comfort, and your own status to obey him.
Right, doing the right thing even if it costs you the promotion.
Exactly. But the city of man is built by the love of self, even to the contempt of God. Yeah, you love your own advancement so much that you will ignore or bend or just outright break God's moral law to get what you want.
And Belbury is basically the ultimate city of man.
Exactly. Belbury is built entirely on what Augustine called the libido dominandi, the lust for mastery, the desire to dominate and control.
And Mark gets sucked right into that.
Because Mark is operating on that exact same frequency. He is driven by love of self.
So it's a match made in heaven or, well, hell.
Right. When his desire to please Lord Feverstone and the N.I.C.E. leadership clashes with his conscience, he just silences his conscience.
He writes those fake articles, right?
Yes. He starts writing propaganda articles for the newspaper that he knows are factually untrue just to prove he's a team player.
Which is so common, just fudging the truth to make the boss happy.
And that's the trap. When professional loyalty replaces the moral law, which is God's design for truth and justice, you suddenly become incredibly useful to powers that hate the image of God.
Man, that fundamentally changes how you look at a Tuesday morning staff meeting.
Doesn't it?
Because it means the daily decisions of career, influence, and institutional loyalty are never merely secular.
Never. And that is the core warning here for the listener. There is no such thing as a purely secular decision when it comes to compromising your integrity.
Right.
When you laugh at a cruel joke just to fit in with the boys, when you manipulate data on a report because your boss hinted that it would make the department look better.
Or when you stay silent during an injustice because speaking up would hurt your chances of making partner.
Exactly. You are making yourself malleable. You are showing the enemy that your conscience has a price tag.
Wow. You start using words like efficiency, pragmatism, and progress to justify doing things you know are morally wrong.
Mark starts with tiny compromises, just writing a few misleading newspaper articles. But because he refuses to draw a moral line, he is dragged step by step into a massive societal rebellion against God's order.
It is the banality of evil. It doesn't start with a pentagram and a blood sacrifice. It starts with a little bit of office gossip and a desire to impress the boss.
Exactly.
Which brings into focus the organization Mark is actually compromising himself for. Let's look really closely at the N.I.C.E.
Yeah, let's look at Belbury.
Because they aren't just a corrupt corporation skimming money off the top or cutting corners on safety. They have a horrifying philosophical agenda.
It goes way beyond greed.
Right. They explicitly state their goal is a constructive fusion between the state and the laboratory. And they want this fusion to be totally free from what they call tiresome restraints.
Which is just their polite, bureaucratic code word for moral laws, ethics, and human rights.
So creepy. They want absolute power, and they view the messy, organic reality of human life as an obstacle.
There is this deeply unsettling scientist character at Belbury named Philostrato.
Oh, I hate that guy.
He is the worst. He talks openly about his vision for the future, and it literally involves getting rid of all trees, all animals, and eventually the human body itself.
He views the physical world as disgusting.
He really does. He hates the fact that human bodies sweat, that they excrete, that they are subject to decay.
Basically everything that makes us biological.
Right. He wants to replace all what he calls dirty dirt. So organisms, leaves, soil, blood with clean dirt.
Clean dirt, meaning minerals, concrete, steel, artificial structures.
Yes. He even tells Mark at one point that the reason the English invented the daily bath is because they are subconsciously hostile to organic life on their own bodies.
Which is just a completely twisted logic.
It really is. It equates the physical world that God actually made with filth and weakness.
It is the ultimate sterile nightmare. It's a world paved over in concrete where nothing grows, nothing breathes, and nothing dies because nothing was ever truly alive in the first place.
And what makes it so chilling is how they justify it to themselves and to the public.
Right, they need a narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's another character, Mr. Strake, who is described as a mad prophet.
Ah, Strake.
Yeah, he is a former clergyman, which makes it even worse because he completely twists Christian theology to serve the N.I.C.E.
He tells Mark that Jesus wasn't a savior of grace.
Right, he says Jesus was a prophet of ruthless power. Strake claims that the N.I.C.E. is actually bringing the kingdom of God to earth, but they are doing it through science and technology.
Talk about taking the Lord's name in vain.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And to achieve this techno-utopia, they demand what Strake calls total commitment and ruthlessness.
They are ready to sacrifice absolutely all human values. Pity, mercy, love.
Strake is perhaps one of the most dangerous archetypes in the entire book because he uses the sacred language of faith to promote pure tyranny.
Yeah.
He says, quote, "The kingdom is going to arrive in this world. The powers of science are an instrument."
Wow.
Yeah. And the theological analyses we look at are very quick to point out the explicit biblical parallel Lewis is drawing here.
Let's hear it.
The N.I.C.E. is a direct modern replay of Genesis chapter 11. It is the Tower of Babel, or as it's pronounced in the original Hebrew, Babel.
Okay, let's explore that connection to Babel, because I feel like it's not just a superficial comparison about a bunch of arrogant guys building a tall building. It's about the underlying philosophy of the builders.
Exactly. Look at the text of Genesis 11. The builders in the plain of Shinar didn't use natural stone. They used artificial materials.
Right, they baked bricks.
Yes. They baked bricks and used bitumen for mortar. They were relying on human synthesis, human technology, to build their own security and make a name for themselves without relying on God.
They wanted to breach the heavens on their own terms.
And Belbury's doing the exact same thing, just substituting baked bricks with technocracy, sociology, and biological engineering.
They want to conquer nature, conquer death, and just ascend to godhood, bypassing the Creator entirely.
But to pull off a deception of this magnitude, you need a really powerful illusion.
Right. People aren't just going to sign up for this voluntarily if they know the truth.
Exactly. And this connects deeply to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2.
Where the Apostle Paul warns the early church about the lawless one.
Right. Paul writes that this figure will use all power, signs, false wonders, and every kind of wicked deception to fool those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth.
And the N.I.C.E. is built entirely on false wonders and wicked deception.
Yes, they seduce intellectuals like Mark with the illusion of cutting-edge, godlike science. Which brings us all the way back to the image you opened the show with.
The severed head.
The severed head. The N.I.C.E. gets a hold of the head of a guillotined murderer named Alcazan.
Such a gruesome detail.
It is. They bring it into their laboratory, hook it up to this terrifying array of tubes, artificial lungs, and blood pumps, and they supposedly bring it back to life.
And the head actually speaks to them.
Yeah. The scientists at Belbury truly believe they have achieved the ultimate scientific triumph. They think they have isolated the pure human intellect from the messy, decaying human body.
They think they're communicating with the supreme, evolved mind that has conquered death.
But the reality is infinitely darker.
Tell me about the macrobes.
So the reality is that the science is a total farce. The machinery isn't generating the consciousness. The head is completely dead.
It's just a prop.
It is simply acting as a biological microphone. It's possessed by demonic entities that the Belbury scientists refer to as macrobes.
Macrobes. Because they have to make it sound scientific.
Exactly. They use this pseudoscientific term to describe what are actually fallen angels, demons.
The scientists think they are achieving scientific godhood, pushing the boundaries of human evolution.
But they are actually just taking direct orders from hell. They are being manipulated by spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms, disguised as scientific progress.
This is such a critical warning for you listening to this today. I mean, we obviously aren't dealing with reanimated, demon-possessed heads in our local government offices or, tech companies.
At least I hope not.
Right. But the underlying spirit, the temptation, is incredibly relevant. What does this actually mean for a Christian trying to navigate the modern world?
It demands a rigorous discernment between genuine science and the ideology of scientism.
Okay, unpack the difference there.
Genuine science is a beautiful, God-honoring endeavor. It is the humble exploration of God's physical creation. It seeks to understand the world as it actually is, discovering the physical laws God put in place.
Like astronomy, biology, chemistry.
Exactly. But scientism is a completely different beast.
How so?
Scientism is the idolatrous belief that the scientific method is the only way to know truth, and therefore scientific techniques should dictate all human values, morals, and political decisions.
It's the arrogant belief that science can essentially save us from the human condition.
Right. It is elevating a tool to the status of a deity.
It's making science into a religion.
Precisely. And history shows us that when you make science a religion, when you completely detach it from moral theology, you end up with totalitarian systems.
You end up with horrors.
You end up with eugenics. You end up with systems that demand the absolute allegiance that belongs exclusively to God.
Which ties back to the beast in Revelation, doesn't it?
It does. The theological analyses compare Belbury to the beast of Revelation 13, a monolithic system that combines state power, surveillance, and ideological control, and it claims total jurisdiction over the human conscience.
Lewis is issuing a massive prophetic warning here. Do not bow to the modern idols of efficiency, technological progress, or expert opinion when they demand that you compromise your humanity or disobey God's law.
It is incredibly sobering.
It really is. Because if Belbury represents the ultimate rejection of God's physical creation, this demonic desire to just pave over the garden, eliminate the body, and live in a sterile, artificial machine, what does the right embrace of creation actually look like?
Whereas the counter-narrative, right?
Exactly. This is where the story pivots so beautifully to Jane Stadek's journey and the incredible contrast provided by the community at St. Anne's.
Jane's trajectory is really the mirror opposite of her husband, Mark's.
Tell us about Jane.
So Jane is a highly intelligent academic. She is writing her doctorate thesis on the 17th century poet John Donne. Specifically, she is writing about Donne's triumphant vindication of the body.
Which is such a brilliant layer of irony from Logres.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because Jane spends her days intellectually defending the theological beauty of the human body and the physical world in her academic papers.
But her actual life.
But in her actual lived reality, her life is completely disembodied. She's incredibly isolated. Her marriage to Mark is cold and sterile.
They barely even talk to each other.
Right. She resents the domestic duties of running a household. She is intensely protective of her own autonomy, and ultimately she's deeply unhappy.
And to make matters worse, she starts having these terrifying clairvoyant nightmares.
Vivid visions.
Yeah, that include seeing Alcason's severed head before she even knows the N.I.C.E. exists.
These visions are just breaking through her carefully controlled, rational life, and they're driving her to the brink of a complete breakdown.
So out of sheer desperation to understand what is happening to her mind, she is led to the community at St. Anne's.
And the moment she steps into St. Anne's, the contrast with Belbury is absolute.
I really like to picture it like this. Bilberry is a cold, silent, sterile corporate waiting room. Everyone is wearing sharp suits, speaking in hushed, guarded tones, and quietly plotting how to step on the person next to them to get ahead.
Everything is artificial.
Exactly. St. Anne's, on the other hand, is like a loud, joyous, slightly messy family Thanksgiving dinner.
I love that comparison.
Right. There are people of all different backgrounds. There are literally animals running through the hallways. The food is hearty and real, and there is loud laughter. Everyone belongs, everyone has a place at the table, but nobody is trying to be exactly the same.
That is a phenomenal analogy. St. Anne's is a true organic household.
How does that connect biblically?
Well, the theological sources related directly to the Apostle Paul's teaching in 1 Corinthians 12, the biblical doctrine of the body of Christ.
Ah.
Think about a physical body. An eye is not an ear, a hand is not a foot. They have completely different functions, different shapes, and different levels of prominence. But they all belong to the same body, and they all serve the head.
Right. Unity and diversity.
Exactly. At St. Anne's, you have incredibly diverse characters. You have a skeptical Scottish rationalist, a brilliant philologist, a humble cleaning woman, and they're all living together.
There is a distinct hierarchy there, though, right?
There is. But it is a hierarchy of love and mutual service, not a hierarchy of domination. Diverse gifts and personal dignities are honored in joyful subordination to God.
But Jane really struggles with this at first. She is a modern woman. She has this very progressive ideal of autonomous selfhood.
She doesn't want to submit to anyone.
No. She believes that freedom means not being subordinate to anyone, least of all her husband, and certainly not some mysterious director of a weird community. She wants to be an independent atom.
And this leads to an incredible encounter with the director, Ransom, where he challenges the very foundation of her worldview.
Which is arguably one of the most profound and challenging conversations in 20th century literature.
It really is. Ransom looks at Jane and tells her that her real trouble is pride.
Ouch.
Yeah, what the medieval poets called dongier. He cuts right through all her intellectual defenses and tells her she is offended by the masculine nature of God.
Okay, let's pause right there, because that phrase, the masculine nature of God, can sound incredibly jarring or offensive to modern ears.
Oh, absolutely.
It sounds like he's making God into a human man. What does Ransom actually mean by the masculine nature of God?
It is vital to understand that Ransom is not talking about biological gender or human sociology here. He is talking about theological reality.
Okay, unpack that.
He describes the masculine as the possessive, eruptive reality that breaks through hedges. He compares it to a gold lion or a bearded bull.
It's forceful?
Yes, it is the ultimate reality breaking through the tiny, carefully manicured little kingdom of Jane's primness and isolation. Jane wants God to be a safe, neutral, democratic vacuum where differences disappear, where she can just be a person without any inherent design or relation to a creator.
She wants a God she can manage, a concept rather than a king.
Exactly. But Ransom tells her that God is ultimate reality, the ultimate initiator. He says, what is above and beyond all things is so masculine that we are all feminine in relation to it.
That's a huge statement.
He means that the entire created universe, every man, woman, angel, and atom, is in a posture of receptivity and submission before the Creator.
He is calling her to surrender her modern illusion of total independence.
He is challenging her to accept the reality of hierarchical complementarity under divine order. You cannot bypass surrender to God.
Because true freedom is not autonomy. True freedom is finding your proper place in the grand created order of God.
It's the terrifying but beautiful realization that you are a creature and you are not the creator.
You are loved, you are designed, but you are not in charge.
Right.
And speaking of creatures and God's design, we absolutely have to talk about the animals at St. Anne's, because this isn't just a house with a few cute pets. Specifically, there is Mr. Bultitude, the bear.
Ah, yes, Mr. Bultitude. I was hoping we'd get to him. He is central to Lewis's point.
The animals aren't just background decoration for a quirky house. They represent a profound theological argument.
I really do.
There's an ongoing brilliant debate between McPhee, who is the resident hyper-rational scientific skeptic at St. Anne's, and Ransom.
McPhee's a guy who wants everything proven in a laboratory.
Right. He looks at Mr. Bultitude the bear and just sees biological impulses, neurons firing, and evolutionary programming.
But Ransom looks at the bear and sees something entirely different.
What's fascinating here is how Lewis uses the animals to beautifully echo the theology of the early church father, Irenaeus.
Irenaeus is so important here. In the early days of the church, Irenaeus had to defend the goodness of the physical body and material creation against a group called the Gnostic heretics.
Let's unpack the Gnostics for a second, because that term gets thrown around a lot in theological circles. What did they actually believe?
Essentially, Gnosticism is the belief that the physical, material world is inherently evil, corrupt, and a mistake.
Like the physical stuff is a prison.
Exactly. They believed that only the spirit or the mind was good, and the ultimate goal of salvation was to escape the physical body and ascend to a purely spiritual realm.
Which sounds suspiciously like a very Bellbury mindset hatred of the physical.
It is the exact same spirit. But Irenaeus, drawing on Genesis, argued forcefully that God created the physical world. He created bodies, and he called them very good. Matter matters to God.
Okay, so how does a tame bear fit into an argument against ancient heretics?
Because Ransom looks at Mr. Bultitude and sees what he calls a pre-Adamite consciousness.
Wait, pre-Adamite? Let's break that down for a second, because that sounds like heavy theological jargon.
It does. Think about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden before the fall, before sin entered the world.
Okay.
They didn't have this constant, neurotic, shameful self-awareness. They just existed in perfect harmony with God and creation.
Right, they were naked and unashamed.
Exactly. When Adam and Eve ate the apple, they became obsessed with themselves. They felt shame. They started hiding. Ransom is saying the bear still has a taste of that unfallen consciousness.
The bear doesn't have a human ego.
Right. When Mr. Bultitude is given a tin of golden syrup, he doesn't sit there and analyze it.
He doesn't think, is this syrup organic? Does eating this make me look gluttonous to the other bears? Am I living my best life?
No. He doesn't have an ego to get in the way. Goodness occurs, and he simply tastes it.
That's beautiful.
It is a pure, uncorrupted experience of physical life as God intended. Ransom calls it one of the ancient unities.
It is a profound celebration of the physical, and this is where the theology hits the pavement for you, the listener.
It really applies today.
It is so easy for Christians to accidentally slip into a modern kind of Gnosticism, treating our faith as just a spiritual, intellectual exercise in our heads, and treating our physical bodies as just annoying vehicles carrying our brains around.
But God created the physical world, and he called it good. Marriage, the domestic rhythms of sweeping a floor, working the soil in a garden, the companionship of animals, the profound joy of eating a good meal with friends, these are sacred gifts.
They are. God's redemptive work doesn't just save our invisible souls. It includes the redemption of the physical body.
We believe in the resurrection of the dead, not just the immortality of the soul.
Right. We are meant to live embodied, tactile lives, anchored in reality, not constantly trying to escape into digital screens, virtual realities, or intellectual abstractions.
Bellbury wants to destroy the body and upload the mind. St. Anne's wants to sanctify the body and submit the mind to God.
But the tension of the book is that these two worlds cannot coexist. Bellbury and St. Anne's are locked in a mortal conflict.
Only one can survive.
And the question then becomes, how do these two totally different worlds actually communicate? How do they wage war? And this brings us to one of the most brilliant and frankly most chilling aspects of the book.
The spiritual power of language.
Yes, it is completely night and day. The way the two sides use language reveals their true nature.
Let's start with Bellbury. At Bellbury, language is a weapon of obfuscation.
It's meant to hide the truth.
Exactly. The leadership men, like the Deputy Director Wither and the cold, calculating Professor Frost, use incredibly evasive, abstract, passive syntax.
Wither is so frustrating to read.
You can read a paragraph of Wither speaking, and at the end of it, you realize he hasn't actually committed to a single concrete fact.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare. It's like when a massive corporation fires 10,000 people right before Christmas, And the HR department sends out an email calling it a strategic right-sizing of our talent matrix to ensure optimal synergies.
Oh, exactly. That is the perfect modern equivalent.
They aren't just softening the blow, they're actively detaching the words from the brutal reality of 10,000 ruined livelihoods.
And the N.I.C.E. weaponizes that exact corporate double talk to justify our absolute atrocities.
When they talk about murder, torture, or kidnapping, they never use those words, do they?
Never. They call it oblique discipline, or liquidation of anachronisms, or remedial treatment.
It's chilling.
They deliberately detach language from objective truth so that words no longer mean what they are supposed to mean. It is a conscious strategy of confusion.
Because if you destroy the meaning of words, you destroy the capacity for moral reasoning.
Right. You can convince people to do horrific things if you wrap the horror in polite, academic-sounding jargon.
While at St. Anne's, the approach to language is the exact opposite.
Yes. At St. Anne's, language must align with reality. Words have actual weight.
Ransom speaks with direct, authoritative declarations.
The language is concrete, active, and rooted in truth. It embodies the command of Jesus. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no.
They use words to reveal truth, to build up and to bless, not to conceal or manipulate.
And this philosophical battle over truth and language builds to the absolute climax of the book.
Which takes place at a massive, opulent banquet at Belbury. The N.I.C.E. has invited all the most important politicians, the press is there, they are ready to unveil their glorious New World Order to the public.
And then Merlin enters the room.
Merlin Ambrosius, the ancient magician of Arthurian legend.
He has been awakened from his centuries-long sleep in Bragdon Wood beneath the college. He aligns himself with Ransom and the forces of God, and he enters that Belbury banquet disguised as a foreign linguist.
Now, I know when people first read this, it can feel like a massive genre clash.
It is definitely a shift.
You have a sci-fi dystopia with demonic scientists, and suddenly a wizard in a robe shows up. Why does Lewis use Merlin? Isn't that deeply weird for a Christian allegory? Why not send an angel or a prophet or just have the building struck by lightning?
It's a very fair question, and it really throws a lot of readers the first time. But Lewis is drawing on the matter of Britain, the Arthurian mythos, for a very specific, profound theological reason.
Okay, why?
Merlin represents pre-modern nature. He represents an ancient time before the split between the spiritual and the physical, a time when humanity had a more primal, integrated relationship with the earth.
So he bridges the gap between natural, earthy magic and Christian grace.
Yes, he is the embodiment of the organic world that Belbury hates.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
By using Merlin as the instrument of judgment, Lewis is making the point that nature itself is rebelling against Belbury's artificial technocracy.
God is using the very earth, the soil, the ancient roots of the natural order that Belbury so deeply despised and tried to pave over to judge them.
Now, as believers today, we obviously ground our faith strictly in Scripture, not in Arthurian myth. We aren't waiting for a wizard to save us.
Right.
But Lewis is creatively using this mythological figure to show that the created order fundamentally belongs to God. The earth is the Lord's, and it will not tolerate being endlessly dissected and destroyed by human hubris. Nature will vomit out those who try to play God.
And the specific judgment Merlin unleashes is incredible. He doesn't throw a fireball or cause an earthquake.
No, he unleashes the curse of Babel.
It is the ultimate literary and theological payoff.
It's so satisfying.
The speaker gets up to give this grand, eloquent keynote address to the press, and as he reads his notes, absolute gibberish comes out of his mouth.
He says things like the madrigal of Verjuice.
And he realizes something is wrong, tries again, and it's even worse.
Then Wither, the master of smooth, evasive rhetoric, tries to take over to calm the crowd, and he starts speaking total nonsense.
Then Jules, the figurehead of the Institute, tries to speak, and it's just babble. Their syntax completely violently breaks down.
And within minutes, the entire banquet hall is screaming incoherently, terrified, unable to communicate a single true thought.
The theological analyses contrast this scene explicitly with Acts chapter 2, the day of Pentecost.
The contrast is magnificent.
Because at Pentecost, in Acts 2, the Holy Spirit comes down upon the early believers in the upper room. And suddenly, all the diverse crowds gathered in Jerusalem can hear the wonders of God declared in their own native languages.
Pentecost was the great reversal of the curse of Babel. The Spirit brought unified understanding because the people were unified in the truth of Jesus Christ. True communion was restored.
But at Belbury, it's the anti-Pentecost.
Exactly. At Bilberry, God's judgment causes catastrophic linguistic breakdown. Because the N.I.C.E. had already destroyed language. Their language had been completely detached from objective truth for so long. They had been lying, using euphemisms for murder, and employing double talk to such a degree that God simply gave them over to the reality of their own choices.
He gave them total incoherence.
They loved lies, so God removed their ability to speak the truth.
It is such a powerful application for us. As Christians, we must vehemently value clear, honest, and courageous speech.
We have to.
We have to reject the propaganda of our day. We have to reject the corporate double talk that renames sin to make it palatable or softens injustice with bureaucratic jargon. We must call things by their true names.
Because if we twist language to serve our own power or our own comfort, we are building our own little Belburys in our hearts.
And false rhetoric will ultimately collapse under the weight of divine truth.
False rhetoric will ultimately collapse. That is the ironclad promise of the book. God's truth cannot be mocked forever.
But before Belbury completely descends into chaos and falls, Mark Studdock, who is trapped inside the Institute, is forced into one final, terrifying test of his soul.
And this brings us to the objective room.
This is, without a doubt, one of the most profound white-knuckle moments in 20th century literature.
It is incredibly tense.
Mark is arrested by his own colleagues. He is locked in a room by Professor Frost, and the room is designed with bizarre, slightly off-kilter angles and spots of color on the walls.
It is designed to induce sensory madness and destroy all sense of proportion.
Frost tells Mark that to complete his initiation into the true inner circle, to prove that he is completely objective and free from what Frost calls the dominant superstitions of human history, Mark must perform a specific action.
He must trample on a large, highly realistic crucifix lying on the floor.
It is a stunning climax, and what makes it so brilliant is that Mark has never been a Christian.
Right, he doesn't even believe in God.
He thinks the Bible is all a fable. He even points out the illogic to Frost, saying, if it's just a bit of wood, why do anything about it? Why do you care if I step on it if it means nothing?
But Frost insists. Frost says an explicit action in the reverse direction is necessary to clear the subconscious of chemical evolutionary biases.
But as Mark stands there in that warped, terrifying room, looking down at this wooden figure of a crucified man, something profound shifts in his mind.
He doesn't suddenly pray a sinner's prayer or have a grand theological epiphany, right?
No, he just observes reality.
He realizes that even if Christianity is a complete myth, even if there is no God, this crucifix represents everything that is straight and normal in the universe.
It represents mercy, self-sacrifice, and love.
And the N.I.C.E., with all its twisted logic, sterilized cruelty, and hunger for power, represents the crooked.
The crucifix on the floor is a perfect picture of what happens when the straight meets the crooked.
It's a picture of what the crooked always does to the straight. It mocks it, it tortures it, and it kills it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Mark, the coward, the man who has spent his entire life just trying to fit in and be on the winning team, has this incredible realization of moral defiance.
Yes.
He thinks to himself, even if the universe is a cheat, even if there is no God, and the straight is always mocked, tortured, and killed by the crooked, why not go down with the ship?
It's amazing. Why join the winning side if the winning side is fundamentally, irredeemably evil?
It is the birth of moral courage.
He realizes that you cannot just be neutral. Earlier in the book, Dr. Dimble quotes a poem by Robert Browning, life's business being just the terrible choice.
A terrible choice.
Dimble explains to Jane that the universe is always hardening and narrowing. It is coming to a point. Good is getting better, more defined, and bad is getting worse, more explicit.
The possibilities of apparent neutrality, of just being a decent person in the middle, are always diminishing.
The whole universe is sorting itself out.
It is the winnowing fan of Christ, separating the wheat from the chaff.
Exactly. And Mark, facing the threat of death, completely alone in a room with a madman, finally makes his choice.
He turns to Frost, refuses to trample the cross, and says, it's all bloody nonsense, and I'm damned if I do any such thing.
He chooses the straight, even though he fully believes it will cost him his life.
And the application here for anyone listening to this deep dive is absolute. There is no opting out of the spiritual war.
You can't sit on the fence?
You cannot just keep your head down in your cubicle, mind your own business, and hope to avoid the conflict. The powers of darkness hate the image of God in you. They hate the moral law written on your heart.
Standing with the straight, standing with Jesus Christ, requires total commitment.
It requires picking up your cross even when it looks weak to the world, even when it costs you your career advancement, your social status, or your very life.
Because the crooked will always try to destroy the straight. The world will always pressure you to trample the cross, whether literally or through 1,000 tiny compromises.
But the promise of the gospel, the truth of the resurrection, proves that the straight ultimately triumphs. Death is swallowed up in victory.
This has been an incredibly heavy but beautiful journey.
It really has, if we distill all of this down to its core. That hideous strength shows us that compromising our morals to join the inner ring, chasing worldly status, and divorcing ourselves from God's physical and moral order leads directly to Babel.
It leads to the destruction of our humanity, our communities, and our ability to even speak the truth.
But on the other hand, embracing God's created physical order, honoring the body, honoring the sanctity of marriage, speaking the hard truth, and submitting our entire intellect and will to Christ leads to the true, joyous, and enduring community of St. Anne's.
It leads to real life, because as Lewis famously states in the book, real life is meeting.
So our call to you, the listener, as you go back into your week, your office, and your home, is to actively cultivate your own St. Anne's.
Whether that is in your family room, your local church, or your close group of friends.
Build communities defined by warmth, radical hospitality, and honest, unflinching speech. Let your homes be places of joyous resistance to a secular, technocratic culture that wants to reduce you to nothing more than a data point or a consumer demographic.
And as we close this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own time.
Throughout the novel, Lewis introduces the concept of planetary angels, the Oyarisu, like the Oyarsa of Mars and the Oyarsa of Venus.
He is using ancient medieval cosmology to dramatically illustrate a profound biblical point.
The heavens are not empty.
Space is not a cold, dead vacuum. It is populated by God's glorious, powerful, and obedient servants.
We see that all throughout Scripture. Hebrews tells us that we are constantly surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. The spiritual realm is teeming with life.
So here's the question for you to consider. If you truly believe that biblical truth, the material world is not a closed mechanical system, and that you are constantly surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, angels, and saints watching how you live, how does that change the way you act?
How does it change the words you choose to say or the compromises you fiercely refuse to make in those quiet, desperate moments when you think you are completely alone?
If the compass always points to true north, even in the absolute dark, will you have the courage to follow it?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into that hideous strength. It has been a profound exploration.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Keep seeking the truth.
We'll see you next time.